Hi there, I'm Eli Sipka, and this is the Apatros Review. Now in this episode we take a look at another film from the Sci-Fi Invasion box set, and this time we'll look at a film called Battle Beyond the Sun. Now by the way, on the cover, there are a couple listings here that are of the wrong year, but in this case, for Battle Beyond the Sun, which says 1959, that's technically true, because actually it's a 62 re-edit of a 59 film. I'll explain that momentarily. And this film is Battle Beyond the Sun, which was actually the first directorial effort of Francis Ford Coppola. Yes, the guy who made The Godfather. But actually, this is actually a re-edit of an old Soviet science fiction film. Because what happened was Roger Corman, in the late 50s, early 60s, had bought the rights to a couple of Soviet science fiction films, Planet Burr, or Storm Planet, and The Heaven's Call. And both films, basically what he did was he took them and edited them, took away the original soundtrack and put in English dubbing, and removed all the propaganda, the Soviet propaganda parts, and shot some new footage and added them to. In fact, with Planet Burr, Corman managed to use the footage to make, 3 films? And these films were usually released to television. I don't know if they were released theatrically, but, you know. And Battle Beyond the Sun was one of those films that he engineered. Of course, in the case of Battle Beyond the Sun, he got some new footage of certain monsters, which I'll explain later in the review. And Francis Ford Coppola basically did the dubbing, direction, stuff like that. Anyway, now this film, if you want to get it, is available on the Mill Creek Sci-Fi Invasion film box set, which I'm making my way through at the moment. Only released in the United States, but you can very easily import it through online shopping sites such as eBay and Amazon. Plus, the film itself is in the public domain, which makes it easy to find if you know where to look. It's probably even on YouTube, so go look it up. Now, number 2. Due to my principles, while I will happily review the re-edits that Roger Corman made from these old Soviet science fiction space flicks, I will most definitely not review the original Soviet films themselves. Those films, while having very impressive visual effects and model work for late 50s, early 60s standards, I'll explain more about this in a review, were nothing more than Soviet propaganda designed to benefit the state. They were not done for entertainment reasons or artistic reasons. They were done just as propaganda. I'm completely against communism in all its evil forms, and I will not feature any of the original Soviet versions. Now, some of you might remember my review on the first spaceship on Venus, back in the Public Domain Madness thing I had in early 2021, but that's kind of an exception because that was the American dubbed version anyway. I didn't review the original version of that. But my review actually talked about the original too. So I'll review the common re-edits, but not the original Soviet versions. Anyway, now for the story. In the year 1997, or at least what the Soviets of the late 50s thought about it, the world's 2 main power blocks, the communist South Hemis and the Western Libertarian North Hemis, so basically North and South Hemispheres, are competing in a race to be the first to reach the planet Mars. When a North Hemis controlled spacecraft on a secret mission to reach Mars runs into trouble and crashes onto an asteroid that is populated by 2 aliens with large genitalia, the crew of a South Hemis space station decides to help them out. This Americanized re-edit of the old 1959 Soviet propaganda exercise masquerading as a science fiction space race flick called The Heaven's Call is a very dumb and extremely boring film. I spent 2 whole days trying to watch this bore fest, and each time I was having trouble focusing my attention on it. It was that boring. I mean, the English dubbing was one thing, but the original Soviet versions must be really horrible. But at least the ridiculous space monsters that Roger Corman tasked Francis Ford Coppola with making to give the audience of the day something to wake up to was a wise decision. And because of those 2 dueling dick and vag monsters, I'll leave this film with a D, 2 out of 10 on running my grading ladder. Well, that in the presence of the original Soviet space model effects, which were, as usual for the time, way ahead of the B-grade effects American films had at the time. Now, for those lefties out there thinking, oh, cool, the communists had better effects, well, that's because of resources. See, unlike in the States where the major studios left science fiction to the B-film studios to do, although the few times that when the major studios did do a sci-fi flick, the effects in those, such as The Day the Earth Still, and probably the best effects of the 50s was in War of the Worlds, the George Pal film, easily blew away anything the Soviets could put out. So lefties out there, don't brag. But in USSR, when the Russian Communist Party controlled everything, even the local film industry, which in this case was Mosfilm, which meant that when the Communist Party wanted a sci-fi flick to act as their propaganda exercise of the day, they gave the film studio all the resources they needed to make the production work at its best. That's all it is, a matter of applied resources. So that's why the 50s sci-fi films from the States were mostly B-grade, low budget. That's why the effects are, today's standards, cheesy. But then again, that actually adds to the charm of those old 50s films. And also, by the way, there was a remake done of Destroy All Humans 2. You know, the cult classic PlayStation Xbox game with that crypto alien. There are reviews of that game online, and it's an awesome remake, to be honest. The original games were good, they were great, but these remakes are definitely awesome. And so, and also the thing about the Destroy All Humans is they're kind of parodies of 50s sci-fi flicks. And while communist films at the time were, I mean, they had great effects, but the messaging was bad. A bit like the woke films they make these days. Now, I'll leave the review at this point. There's simply nothing more to say about this particular film, except to remark that the acting is, as usual for Soviet flicks, being completely wooden. Now, I mark acting differently from other reviewers, measuring the caliber of an actor's performance purely on how convincing they are in the performance. So, as long as you convince me you're in that character, I'm going to mark your acting accordingly. But here, the Soviet actors practically have no material assigned to their characters, so they have nothing to offer to the audience, who are probably paying a couple of eggs or at least half a bottle of vodka as an admission price at Soviet cinemas, and getting flashy but stupid propaganda in return. And thus, nothing for us to connect to those characters. And to be honest, in the Soviet science fiction films, the characters didn't even have names. That's how bad it was. And those two genital monsters? Well, they're silly as fuck. Now, this film is in the public domain, so it's rather easy to find if you're good at the movie hunting business. Like I said, it's actually on this. Okay, that's it for Battle Beyond the Sun. It gets a D, 2 out of 10. It's bad. Not terrible, because the model effects are, like I said, they were great for the time. But you know, if Hollywood could put in an effort, they could easily blow away the Soviet effects, and they did that, like War of the Worlds and Day of the Earth Still, and you know, the other big budget sci-fi films of the 50s. Okay, so that film gets a D, 2 out of 10. It's bad. Now, if you have any questions about films or DVDs in general, just hit me up in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer. I do not do requests. It's not practical for my channel. Oh, and also, if any one of you, a little warning, if any one of you on any YouTube channel actually comes across comments that claim to be from a channel owner doing some sort of giveaway with a number on the name, do not respond to it. Those are scam bots. They're becoming a really big problem lately, the past few months. Alright. Hope you guys are staying safe, take it easy, and that's it for this review. See ya.